Hey y'all, I'm Shauna. Welcome in or welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about the curated life. And there are niches out there or philosophies, lifestyles perhaps. I'm thinking about things like minimalism or capsule wardrobing, even conscious consumerism or specific types of conscious consumerism. These kinds of niches of the internet or ways of living, I should say, that can entice one to curate their life or sections of their life, right? Capsule wardrobers would be more enticed to curate their wardrobe, and their curation can, in fact, start and stop with their wardrobe. There's nothing inherently wrong with having a desire to curate your life. It's not objectively a problem, but today we're going to talk about how it can be a problem. If you do want to curate your life, it's not going to inherently end in a problem or be one. But if it is, or you experience maybe some struggles with it, these are some that you might encounter, or perhaps some things to consider on your curation journey. I do think that a curated life can be a trap for some people, or can lead to some negative outcomes that one might not have foreseen on the outset. And I'm going to share some of my own experiences with you today. I'm feeling a little like fall incarnate today. Like I have my pumpkin mug and I busted this sweater out. I had this in my quarantine bin from last year because I wore it for all of one video and hated it. And then put it in my quarantine bin, and then I pulled it out this year and I was like, it's kind of cute, right? And then I put it on. I was like, yeah, I know exactly why this was in the quarantine bin last year. So I'm gonna wear it for my one video because it's very like fall. It looks cute from like here up. So we're just gonna roll with it today. So I fell into this trap specifically with makeup and clothing. I feel like it kind of happened twice, one around 2019 and one around 2021. And I really feel like the phrase that has stuck out with me the most, and this could just be my own bias, it probably is, to be honest, is the term curated collection. How many of y'all have heard in the makeup space the term curated collection? I was like, oh, I love this idea. And I bet you, if you were to look back in my videos, I probably said this exact phrase too, because I wanted to have a curated makeup collection. And generally, I kind of took this to mean that people wanted to own things that they liked a bit, maybe like the spark joy idea, but not inherently that, or not totally that. And they wanted to own things not just that they liked, but that they really, really enjoyed or loved. Things that they were actually using. They wanted to own things that made them happy and not have too much of any one thing. And what a curated collection looked like did kind of vary from person to person, where somebody would be happy with things that they didn't use all that often, but still got some use if they really liked it, where other people maybe wanted to own few things or as few as possible, and kind of more of the minimalist angle of things. Everything got used and everything got loved, and that was, curation. In my opinion, what I have seen as a viewer in this makeup example, but I think it is also very true with clothes, and we're going to talk more in depth about this topic. So we're starting to scratch the surface. I think that this quest for the curated life leads a lot of people to decluttering. And I really think that decluttering is a big part of how people curate. And it makes at least a bit of sense when you think about what curating is. And I think this is one of the ways that people attempted to approach curation with intentionality. And I do think that curation is an inherently intentional practice, because curation, like as an actual activity, it's a vetting, it's an organizing, it's a selecting. It is a conscious choice. You do not curate on accident. You curate on purpose. And I think over the past maybe 5 years, maybe even longer than that, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, there has been increasing interest in intentionality and intentional living. And this idea of a curated X or a curated life, curated wardrobe, the curated closet, has really enticed people and kind of view it as this way of stepping one's toes into intentional living. I would agree that there is a level of intentionality to it, to curation, because you are organizing and selecting and vetting, and you are thinking about your stuff, perhaps more than you have previously or without this curation. There's a considering or a reflecting that I think happens with curating. So I think that the intentions behind curation and intentionality come from a good place or a good desire. But I think that if we go into this idea of curation with this in mind, of this, like, I want to curate to be intentional, I think it can lead people awry. It can have unintended consequences. And I also don't think that curating one's life is the only way or even the best way really to be intentional or to live an intentional life. When I began this act of curating myself, one thing I didn't realize from the outset is that curation is an active and constant process. One must consistently and constantly be curating a category in order for said thing to be curated. And I really think that because this is a constant act, that it can impact how we view our lives and our stuff. And we'll talk explicitly about that and probably quite in depth in just a second. And it's this consistency that is required for curation that led to things that I didn't personally enjoy. If you're not paying attention to your stuff, then things can become uncurated pretty quickly if you are a consumer or if you continuously buy stuff. And I think some people might think this idea of curation might help them, live this more intentional life, but you can get quickly sucked into a buy and declutter cycle if you don't stop the buying and all you are doing is curating. This suspiciously can just look like the buy and declutter cycle, where you're curating by decluttering, and we get this false sense of satisfaction because we believe that we are curating our lives, or we're curating our makeup or our clothes or whatever category it is, mugs or painting supplies, blankets, whatever category. We get this false sense of security or comfort because we are curating our lives, when in fact we are just in a buy and declutter cycle. And so if you stop your curation, then you just kind of own stuff. It just kind of maybe becomes like what it was. And so I personally find this constant need to curate exhausting because of the maintenance. But I also appreciate just letting go and not thinking about my stuff all that much. What I noticed when I was curating my stuff, I was constantly in tune with my stuff. Everything that I owned, what I had, measuring it against other things. And I just don't enjoy being so in tune and so critical of my stuff. Sometimes I just don't want to think about it. I just don't want my stuff or particular category stuff to take up so much energy. There are moments in a year where I enjoy that or I want that. I typically enjoy turning over my capsule wardrobe, but I don't want that to be a big part of my life because I can quickly become too hyper-focused on my stuff and too critical of my stuff, where turns into a desire to shop or it just becomes unfun, really. If you are a curator of stuff, you can absolutely set your own goals and desires and merits, or criteria, I should say, for how and when you curate. That's all well and good, but that also doesn't prevent curation from being a constant and active process. People who curate their lives also tend to enjoy stuff, and it kind of, I think in some cases at least, that it is this enjoyment of stuff that leads people to the desire to curate said stuff. And so if you are somebody who enjoys stuff, curating can become exciting, and it can become a way to extend the joy or the pleasure of shopping and to kind of play it out a little bit, which can be fun for some folks, but I think it could just be a way, or at least it was for me. And again, my experience is not every experience, but it can just become a way for shopping and stuff to consume more of my thoughts in my life than I particularly wanted. And with curation, as I was talking about earlier, I really do think that one of the traps or risks of curation is having your home or a category of your home become a revolving door of stuff. Stuff is just constantly coming in and out in your quest of curation, because ultimately, what do you do when something is not part of your curation anymore? Like something for something to be curated, everything has to be selected and chosen from a selection of things. That could just truly be what's available at the store, but also the other things that you have. So what do you do with the things that aren't part of your curation anymore? They get decluttered in a lot of cases. And so I think that decluttering is a requirement or essential part of curation. And in my opinion, if curation is the goal, I think that it can matter more than other kinds of criteria, or I would say maybe points of consideration. I think it can matter more than the item's functionality or our desires to use said things. Because if we're curating things, things are leaving because they don't match what we want, usually for aesthetic purposes or preference purposes, and not because the thing is not functional anymore. Curation quite often doesn't include functionality and use value and this desire to own things for a long time. It's very easy for curation to turn into a quest for perfection or to maintain a perfect or ideal aesthetic. This can mean that stuff gets used for a small window of time and then it gets removed or decluttered. And this, I think, happens the most when we are, or when somebody is really focused on aesthetics and preference, and also when one is not building in this understanding of their own preferences and like their lifespan of products when they are shopping to begin with. So one thing I see all the time on beauty YouTube is somebody will have a preference for a particular formula of blush or particular color of blush, and these are curation people. And then they'll buy 5 or 6 to try out, or they'll buy 5 or 6 maybe cherry colored lip glosses, and then they won't enjoy that thing as much and they'll have a new preference or they'll have a new fixation. And then in the name of curation, they'll declutter all but 1 or 2. So 4 of those blushes got used for 6 or 12 months and they are gone. Most of our makeup preferences will not last our lifetimes. There are trends in the beauty world, and there are trends in most worlds of consumer goods. And if this is our norm to declutter when our preferences change, then I think one should also be considered of that when buying it. You maybe don't need 6 cream blushes if you are a curator. Maybe you just need 1 or 2. Most especially if you're going to declutter them when they are no longer your preference. I think so many people forget about the lifespan of their preferences and overbuy because of excitement or enjoyment of the thing when they have no real plan to use things to completion. And that I think is part of the problem of curation, is that lifespan is rarely, if ever, taken into account, because that's not really the goal of curation. I'm going to give you a personal example. My partner and I have our own kind of sets of towels, and none of them match. I think at most we have like maybe 2 of the same towel, but we are rarely using them at the same time. And on any given day, you're going to see mismatched bath towels and also mismatched floor mats. To have a curated life would very likely include having a matching towel set or matching floor mats that fits our bathroom aesthetic. The towels, however, are functionally perfect. Mismatched home decor items like dishes or mugs or lamps even used to bother me because curation, because aesthetics. But I personally care far more about using what I actually have more than things looking cute. Our lamps in the main living space are mismatched This one back there, we got from my partner's sister. And then, well, we have two of them. And then we have one that's from like his childhood home. That one is probably the main lamp in our space. You would never see it because it's not facing the camera. It's noticeable that it doesn't match the other lamps. However, said lamp has a lot of meaning and history to it that I love having that like little piece in our home of my partner's childhood, things that bring positive memories. That is just so good to me. There's lots of stuff like that in our place. Maybe not things that hold memories, but things that are functionally fine or are just like in great condition that I would not care about decluttering in the name of curation. And I think that this idea of curation can lead people to be becoming really obsessed with aesthetics and caring more, as I was trying to allude to, more about aesthetics than other kinds of factors, than functionality, usability, or even just like warm, cozy kind of feelings. And it's true that in a curated life, you get to make the rules. Nobody's going to force anybody to get rid of something that holds memories or things like that. But I think that it can become a slippery slope, if you will, of just getting rid of stuff because they don't match the vibe or the aesthetic. Maybe it's not the lamp today. Maybe it's the chair or the table. That right there is I got it from my parents. It's basically like a TV tray. It's foldable. And it's been my entryway table for 3 years because it just works. It's not like the cutest thing ever, but it's just like, it's so practical. It's not really about the lamp or the table or the towels, but the accumulation and appreciation for less than perfect things. The things that work and function perfectly are great with me because I don't really want to spend all my energy thinking about my stuff. And that is what curation can quite often lead to. I think perhaps the biggest pitfall of a curated life, or one of the things that can happen, is discontentedness. And I think that curation can lead to discontent or viewing your life or your stuff through a lens of deficiency. The first is because I think it encourages us to view our lives through such a negative lens. You curate one area. Maybe it's your bathroom. It's kind of a self-contained space. You feel great about it, and then you look from your bathroom into your kitchen. Then you start noticing all the ways that your life isn't aesthetic or curated. Sure, maybe getting rid of a couple of things is a great idea. Maybe it helps you live a little bit more functionally. But then you start noticing all of the ways that your life isn't curated. And you start noticing all of the stuff that you have that doesn't go or isn't aesthetic or isn't the newest thing or the most perfect or ideal of that thing. You start noticing the deficiencies in your stuff. And then I think you can start seeing your stuff as lackluster, as somehow not good enough or not ideal enough. I was paying attention to my stuff at a couple of different moments, like when I first moved out or when I moved places or when my partner moved in. There's definitely moments of that, or where it's helpful to think about stuff or perhaps necessary or even desirable. But I noticed that when I just kind of checked out of it, I really stopped thinking about my stuff and I became happier. And when I started working on this video, I began to notice all of the little things that I had noticed previously that I had forgotten about. The mismatched towels and floor mats and chairs and tables and just stuff that, doesn't go together. Pillowcases that are 15 years old. Well, maybe not pillowcases. Like couch pillowcases, that are just like, they're okay. And I personally hate that. I personally hate thinking about about my stuff, my perfectly usable functional stuff, through this lens of deficiency. In my personal opinion, I think the more you curate, the more you see deficiency in your life, the more opportunity to curate you see. And it can become a truly never-ending process and a money pit. Now you could say, well, it's just bath mats or it's just towels. Well, first of all, towels are really expensive, or they can be. I could spend $200 upgrading towels and bath mats. Probably more if I wanted to. And then where does it stop? If you view your home through deficiency, you can constantly be upgrading. It's like a Diderot effect in action, constantly in action. I think the second way that curation can lead to discontentedness is this quest, as I was mentioning, for the perfect thing, or always being on the lookout for the perfect thing or the next best thing. And I don't think this applies to every area. Like, I don't think it's inherently about like a blanket or a couch. I think this is more perhaps applicable to things that are more consumable, like beauty products or maybe art supplies. Maybe in your quest to curate your makeup collection, you begin wondering if you really own the best foundation or the best blush or the best setting powder. So you are consistently trying new things, and you might own something that is objectively great for you, or maybe not objectively, but you just really you like that setting powder or you like that foundation. But in the back of your mind, is this the best? Is this the best one? Is there a newer, nicer, or more perfect option? You can pay attention to new stuff more, or consistently and constantly be on the lookout for new stuff. I think this can lead us to not appreciating what we have, not appreciating for stuff and that it works for us or that it's usable. I think that if something isn't working for you, you might not necessarily know exactly what the problem is. Like if your mascara isn't working right, or maybe your markers just aren't working right. You might not know exactly what the problem is, but I think you generally know when something isn't working for you, it's not right. Then sure, go perhaps look at alternatives, but that's not the same as wondering if you own the best shampoo or the best conditioner or the best lip gloss. And it can be a really hard thing to turn off. You can consistently be on the lookout for new stuff, better stuff. And where is the appreciation here? Where is the appreciation for your stuff that you currently have, for your current makeup or your current art products or bath products? And there might be some things that you'll use up anyways, but I think this can lead to owning multiples because of this desire to try, not appreciating what you have, and also maybe getting out of practice in using up what you have because you are constantly wanting more and wanting better. And on top of that, it can become a really easy way to declutter stuff. If something isn't the best version, the newest version, or perfect, you declutter it. And then decluttering becomes the main way you get rid of stuff instead of using what you have. And I'm not saying to use complete garbage products, but we're also not talking about dichotomies as extreme as that. We're talking about average products or good products, even great products. And this is kind of my point, that curation is quite often about the organizing and the compiling, the putting together, the gathering, not about the using. Curating says nothing about using or wearing. It's about the accumulation or the gathering of a particular kind of set of items, iteration of items. The focus is not on using what you have and finding ways to enjoy what you have, or finding ways to get excited about what you have or get creative about what you have. It's about the gathering or the grouping, the curating. And I also think that curating can lead to this idea that I believe is a fallacy, that we can find the perfect thing, or this idea that the perfect thing exists and that's like a destination, that you will eventually find the perfect thing and then you can stop looking, right? Like we think one day we'll just find the perfect foundation for us and then we're done. We can stop looking, but you might never stop looking if you believe that there's something newer or better out there. So you can miss the great things you already have, like one potential caveat or downfall. But in other categories of our lives, in some categories of our lives, our preferences are constantly evolving. And so I see people most specifically with the clothes, they'll say like, I thrifted my dream wardrobe, or I put together my dream fall wardrobe. This kind of creates this false sense of perfection, that a perfect wardrobe exists, and that once you have that, you are done with your wardrobe. There's no such thing, because your preferences and your style are constantly evolving. Maybe not every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, but if you look back between right now and 10 years, I bet you there's at least some evolution in your wardrobe. Our evolutions could be smaller or bigger depending on, who we are, what we've gone through, or other factors. And so this is your dream wardrobe right now. I think few of us would look back at our wardrobes from 10 years ago and say that was a dream wardrobe, because our lives are different, we're different, and perhaps our bodies are different. 10 years ago, I was in university. I had a specific kind of circumstance in life that is not applicable to now. Some people are married and they weren't before. Some people have kids and they weren't before. Some people have changed jobs from 10 years ago. And we're not even talking about personal style. All these things do affect what we might want to wear, even if we're talking about the exact same moment in time. Like if you were in university right now versus a lawyer, you might want different things in your wardrobe. Like we're not even talking about the passage of time, is what I'm trying to say. And the passage of time, there are new preferences and trends and things that come in and out of our lives that also shape what we want for ourselves. So a dream wardrobe doesn't exist. A dream wardrobe for right now exists. I don't think people are saying these things because they're delusional. I think people are saying these things because they're so excited about this specific iteration, that they really believe that this is their dream wardrobe because it's their dream wardrobe right now. And then it sets up this idea that we should always or constantly feel like this. Well, to have the perfect wardrobe means constant curation, consistently getting rid of stuff that might be perfectly wearable or usable. It's this constant revolving door that really bothers me when I see it on like TikTok or YouTube and kind of promoted as the normal or as the ideal, most especially because it tends to come up in spaces where people are claiming intentionality. It could be like minimalism or conscious consumerism, intentional living kind of spheres too. And so people can see this constant in and out, constant circulation of stuff, constant buying and decluttering as normal and okay because it's intentional. There's a channel in the fashion space that does this, and I wouldn't say she's overbuying. It can definitely happen. Like, I think the overbuying happens more in the beauty side of like the intentional, conscious consumer, minimal, maybe beauty space, where people are buying stuff to review and picking maybe like one or two things out of the stuff that they reviewed or accepted in PR. So they are curating and they might only ever own 6 blushes in their permanent home, but maybe they try 20 or 30 in a year. That's curation. And that is conscious to some people, like a conscious choice to only accept or own 2 blushes or 6 blushes. And in the fashion space, this happens maybe less in your face because somebody might only ever own like one small closet worth of stuff, but it's still a very constant closet evolution. Owning fewer things doesn't actually mean that you are buying less stuff or spending less money. Like you could only ever own 30 garments, but if you're buying 30 garments, brand new garments every year, you can still claim curation and minimalism. And I think what happens with curation is that the curation people find themselves in these more intentional spaces, and people kind of lump terms together or ideologies together, assuming intentionality also means sustainability, also means environmentalism. And some people would call only ever owning 30 things as sustainable, others wouldn't be. And so there's definitely a conflation or maybe mismatching of values that's happening. I don't know for sure. But I do believe that many of these curators out there really believe that they are doing something good and beneficial for themselves and their audience because they don't own these gigantic wardrobes or makeup collections that is normal in whatever kind of respective niche. But we can also convince people to buy more or buy and declutter and emulate this lifestyle in the name of minimalism, which can read to other people as sustainability or environmentalism. Or this simple conflation that curating means owning less, which means sustainable. Owning a curated life or a curated section of your life doesn't inherently mean that you shop well, or you shop less, or you even spend less money. You're not inherently spending within your means or being sustainable if you're a curator. It just means that you're only ever at one point owning a selection of items. You can absolutely spend less money or be more sustainable. It just doesn't inherently mean that. And I think all of this leads people to feeling good about how they're living their lives because they're only ever owning a small amount of stuff, not really considering or perhaps the lifespan of their products or how much they're really getting rid of. People can even think of themselves as conscious consumers because they're owning less in quantity, or perhaps they're owning better quality, but they're not really thinking about how much they are actually getting rid of or where it's going. And so I bring this up to say that it's not inherently sustainable or unsustainable. It's whatever perspective you make it. So if you want to be a curator of things, and that's your goal because for you, it's really a way of practicing intentionality, I think that's a wonderful thing. If sustainability is important to you, you can explore ways of how to do this sustainably and what that might look like. And creating your own, perhaps, criteria for how and when or why you want to curate. So if something like sustainability or shopping less, making the most of what you have is important to you, I think one of the best things to do is to think about how you can get enjoyment, excitement, and novelty about what you already have. As they say, the most sustainable thing you can do is use what you have. And so if we can find ways to make owning our stuff exciting, then we own it for longer or enjoyable. And I think that's really important. And I really think that the discontentment portion of this can really factor into why people shop and why people can get into these cycles of curation and maybe miss how it can negatively be affecting their lives or their perspective on stuff. Like you aren't inherently going to stop spending money or shop differently because you want to curate something. I think you would have to bring other frameworks or other ways of thinking with the curation in order to do that. Just not going to inherently come alongside it. What I'm trying to say. So that's everything for me today. I would like to hear from you on this topic and curation. Has it worked for you? Has it not? Have you thought about it? As I was mentioning at the top of the video, these are my own perspective and thoughts. And I really do think that curation can be a problem for some people and maybe lead to more spending or spending just as much money or time or energy on shopping as you were before. Whereas for others, the intentionality that comes alongside it could do some wonderful things. So I'd really like to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, hanging out with me today, and I would love it if you would subscribe and come back again for another new video. I hope to see you again around here soon.